I've distributed a agenda, and the first item.
Excuse me interrupting so soon, but is there a written agenda?
Unfortunately not. It was in the email that went out. I can say that it's got 6 items. The site meeting with the Environment Agency and the Internal Drainage Board, what we learned and what we thought about it. Opinions on the future plans, what the Environment Agency and the Internal Drainage Board are planning, and what we think, what Sandwich thinks. The question of linking the water in the Delf to the water in the rope walk and butts. Is that useful? Is it historically inaccurate? Or can't it make much difference? Putting fish back in the rope walk or not? The brewery sluice repairs, might there be a risk to the steep banks of the guest lane? And I've briefly discussed that. And then the nature of the final report that will be written for the council and in fact for the residents of Sandwich.
Okay.
So the first item is the site meeting last Thursday with the Environment Agency and the Internal Drainage Board, which I think there were several people here who were at it, and it was very, very useful. We started down on the Delf opposite the St. Bart's Road, and within a few days they started the first policy that they described, which was to put brushwood bundles and some kind of matting in the Delf against the garden of the house called Mallards, to narrow the channel to make it faster, but also to give them somewhere to put dredging, because if they dredge, they have nowhere to put it. They can't dump it on the poor chap's garden. So with this, they kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You've got somewhere to put the dredging and the silt, and they've narrowed the channel to make it faster. It was explained that the Environment Agency is committed, it is their plan, and they will follow through to divert more water and pump more water into the Delf. And the only thing they have to do is negotiate with some landowners down on Worth Marshes who have got licenses to abstract water. So that there'll have to be some kind of negotiation. But they will, that is their plan, they will divert more water. There's some problems with deteriorating banks down on the Worth Marshes. They have to repair that to stop flooding. If they were to raise the level of the Delf, that might be a threat to some fields. So they have to improve the banks at that stage. They've cleared a lot of the silt on the way into town. They're working on these brushwood bundles to narrow the channel along Dover Road, then into New Street. At New Street, we then had a discussion about the rope walk, of course, because the rope walk comes into the Delf. Well, the rope walk coincides with the Delf at the New Street end of the rope walk. And even today I learned new things. When we discussed it with the Internal Drainage Board at that point, and there was a straggly group of up to 20 people trailing along the road, having different chats at different points. So interrupt me if you were there and you heard different bits. There is small pipe, a small bore pipe that goes from the rope walk under New Street to the Delph. And there is a penstock, a sluice at that point, which is closed at the moment, which can be opened, and it can allow a flow of, I assume, fresh water from the Delph into the rope walk, although it occurs to me it might allow horrible polluted stagnant water from the rope walk into the Delph. I don't know which is which. But Stephen Fuller, who wrote these books, and who ought to know, and has written an update as well, says that it's not just a pipe at that point, that in 1825, a tunnel was due to be constructed to enable water from the rope walk to go under the Delph and to carry the moat further along Mill Wall and eventually out to the Stour, which is dry now. I mean, it's completely dry. He's rather peeved that the Internal Drainage Board and the Environment Agency don't want to know about this tunnel and are only concerned about that pipe, because he says it's an entirely separate structure that is denied, its existence is denied. But the point is, and it's it'll be an aspect of the report, the moat that went round Sandwich, more or less, must have been filthy, polluted and full of dead cats. The Delph, by definition, was a source of clean drinking water, so they kept them separate. So is it historically accurate for us as a body to recommend that the two water bodies be linked? This is an issue. Anyway, we carried on all through the town, following it as much as we could. Obviously it was under the streets. And we got to Horse Pond Sluice, and the sluice is owned by Sandwich Town Council, but it's not used. But it was taken over by Sandwich Town Council as a historical artefact. We then went up Loop Street to the point near the Butts, and again it was pointed out that a link is perfectly possible at that point between the Delph and the Butts. So the talk was of they could allow clean Delph water into the Butts and the rope walk at both ends. If they want, and I think they want, that is their plan. So we followed it, ignored going around the Guestling, and we went, I think, no we didn't, we went round the Guestling and went to Brewery Sluice, where, to show what an exclusive, superior body we were, they actually unlocked the gates and let us into the structure. For a view of the Guestling I've never had, how steep-sided it is. Subsequently, the IDB have told me that they don't believe that if they increase the flow through the Delph, that it would do any underlining damage to that bank, because it won't be of any such great significance that there will be any swirl effect. The reason the Brewery Sluice is still shut is that there is this huge lump of, quotes, well-engineered concrete, which they don't know, it's below the surface of the water. They don't know whether it's holding something up, what role it plays, and before they just take a hatchet to it, they need to find out, should they leave it? If they leave it, then the debris screen that protects internal workings of the brewery sluice will need to be made smaller to take into account this lump of concrete. If it's made smaller, will it be good enough to protect the sluice from floating debris? They still say that by the summer that will be sorted. They've got it being researched and it will be sorted. Now, this implies, at very least, that one of the things that a lot of people are worried about is that we're on course to get more water and a bit of a flow of water pumped along the Delph, along Dover Road, along New Street, through the town, round Loop Street, along the Guest Lane, and then back out again into the Stour, and the sluice at the Stour will prevent any high tide salt water getting back in. One of the issues that we as a body, and it will go in the report, is to discuss, do we want the rope walk and the butts to be linked to the Delph? Now, this definitely appealed to some of us who are concerned about wildlife, because the thought of fresher, more oxygenated water getting into what is currently a stagnant pond, because no water comes in and no water goes out, seems a better option for wildlife. But that seemed to be historically inaccurate, because it's never been linked, because when it was a source of fresh water, they kept it separate from the pollution.
But that was a very, very long time ago, and it would be historically accurate if you thought about 40, 50, 60 years ago, because they did open the New Street sluice, or whatever it's called.
They used to flush it back, didn't
They did, yeah,
they? Flush the
definitely.
water used to come in, flush the butts.
And the only thing stopping it at the other end, I believe, is the thing that DDC have to do. What is it, under the bridge? The tunnel's too small? I don't.
Yeah.
Culvert or something.
Yeah.
I've
The
never
culvert.
understood what was wrong and why it's so expensive, but that would need to be done, wouldn't it, for the water to get up to the boats?
There's pipe already exists under the bridge.
Yeah,
They say it's going to be bigger, and it used to work before, so I don't
And
know.
also the man from the internal drainage board said, didn't you say that he said he put a rod up it and it seemed to be going through, or was that a different
That
thing?
was the one at New Street,
Ah,
which is when they discovered it was not much bigger than that, which,
mm.
There
But
must
it
be some
used to be
water going.
opened.
Yeah, must be some water going through it though, because the level does go up and down. And when it rains, it goes. I live right next to it, so it does go up a couple of inches, but it'll go down again in a couple of days. But if it's really heavy rain, that won't happen because it's pretty blocked out. It must be some flow.
yeah, right. And so, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, if you started a bit sort of higher upstream, the point about being able to push more water down, was Sean Revel on the walk you had? He's the water controller.
No, everybody mentions Sean
Yeah, yeah.
Revel the Level, I call him, but I've never.
Yeah, well,
I've never met.
he's brilliant. He knows everything about all the flows in the dikes. And anyway, the point is, he undoubtedly can push more water down, but then you have to take account, as you said, of the flooding potential flooding at John Bean's land.
Yeah.
And the marshes, the wet marshes there, but that's doable. You know, that bank is repairable. But I've seen it in a state of flood, and farmer won't like that, of course. But so that needs doing. But then when you get down to what's far to New Street and this desilting, there's another point there about the depositing the silt in the way you described. That's brilliant. But having been a member of John Bragg's group, sadly 2 or 3 years ago, Cowley's Meadow was going to be used. The council apparently approved the use of Cowley's Meadow for depositing silt, as long as it's not toxic, which proved not to be.
And it was done.
But that should remain, or could still remain, a reasonable place to put. Because there's going to be a whole lot more further down New Street that you go, and then you just go somewhere. And of course, you won't have a garden, or won't have a. But if that's still doable, then that. I did speak to Pete Downing, and it is the problem where to put all the silt. Having said all of that, once the silt is deposited somewhere or other, then there is the issue of having enough of a flow to go down the Delf, as well as potentially supply the roadwalk and the huts. So that would be a question, as I say, starting at source and how much water can be pushed down it, what needs to be done to increase the flow. If you diverted some of it, would you still be able to clean up and have a flow down Elf Street, which is a sheer embarrassment? It's so disgusting, isn't it? So it seems to me there's a sort of logical sequence of to follow through there, each bit requiring some kind of work.
I think when we just thought there was a small pipe linking the rope walk and the Delf at New Street, that even if they had the most grand ambition to divert clean water into the rope walk, it wouldn't in fact produce much of a flow, because if the pipe is only like that and the rope walk is half the width of this room, what effect would it make?
I think as you pointed out that I think about 4-inch pipe, and for I should think 4 hours each tide, the water won't be going up into the river because the return valve will be slowed, so that presumably will be going down through to South Polders, I imagine.
It does at the moment.
In which case you could actually bring it in at the top end of the rope walk and have a slow, steady trickle for 4 hours every day. If when Delf is flowing, that is. I understand it won't be flowing all the time, but certainly I would think there's a possibility.
You mean water from South Polders?
No, when the non-return valve is closed, so the water from Delf can't get out of the end, that's going to back up, and it would normally go down. I would think it would go down and go through the sluice at by the cricket pavilion and out to South Polders and out to the Stour that way. But you could always divert it back and make it come in the other end, provided it didn't lift the level too much to do that. So it would actually run through the butts and out to South Polders for 4 or 5 hours, however long that is shut each time.
Really?
I would have thought.
Case of flow levels, isn't it, actually? Because I think you were saying that the rope walk is the surface water level, and the rope walk is lower than the Delf. I mean, so there's no question of it flowing backwards into the Delf. The Delf flows over the top of the moat, doesn't it? You know, you can see where the moat is underneath, and then the rope walk is lower still.
So we did ask about the question of the was there, and he did say they were the same actually. So if they are the same, I don't know.
They can't be, can they, when you think about it? Because the road goes down like that and then down to the road walk. If you think of New Street going along and the water in the Delf is there, then the road goes slightly down.
Yes.
And
oh yes, we had to stumble.
so it can't be at the same level, can it?
Surely that's a fact that can be determined. That's the case.
Well, I mean, it's a question that was asked, and he said they were the same level, so
Maybe he meant there's the same level of water in each one, but they're not the same level, as in,
well,
I don't know. I don't know at all.
because I said, is it possible that theoretically could it actually flow through them? And he said yes. That was the man from doing rainfall.
Yeah.
But it must go through there because it used to, didn't it? It used to be opened, right there. I think you've probably got lots of information that we need, because this has all been discussed before, hasn't it, in the Delf working group?
Yeah.
But we have no, we don't have any access to any of that stuff, so. Those,
But, you're right, surely, but I think if we did speak, and to the chairman of the meeting, I'm sorry. and you had access to the notes that were taken. I actually wrote those notes.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you
Well,
have notes to the Delph working
Working
group?
group.
yes, because the basis of some of this is
Yeah,
Okay.
but there was all the discussions with the representative from the Environment Agency, Pete Dowling, and so on. In fact, there were a number of contributions from different people, including farmers, and John Bean was one of them, and so on.
We need to look for those then, because you don't have
Well,
them, do you?
not
the
roughly.
meeting minutes or
But
whatever.
no, but I see this group as a follow-on from
Yeah.
this to follow on with that notion of improving the Delph, which was delayed and appeared to have been abandoned over the last few years, but now has been revived.
You know, one of the problems was, well, clearly COVID was a major
Yeah.
factor, and everything came to a halt, but also the fact that the Environment Agency, having spent a lot of money
Yeah.
on Gaze and Salts, I forget how much, but it could be $250,000 or more,
Yeah.
and then weren't able to operate it, because of the flat problems in the river. But I don't know if they knew about the concrete slab at that stage. That's just
No,
a new
a new
observation. But the flat was a real embarrassment, and shortly afterwards they then had to get the contractors to redesign something or other, presumably pay for it, and then we were locked down, and that was the end. And sadly, we're not, Councillor Bragg might have been able to retake it, and then what happened, he died, and so on. So yes, it is a successor to that, but quite a lot of work had been going on, and of which these issues you've raised have been all part, and every one of them is important in that process. And can I just add one other thing? I'm sorry, take the floor, but I did go and have a look, but I was interested to see what they were doing today in New Street, and talked to Pete Dowling, and he told me another thing that was quite important, which again they are doing. Apparently there's always been a problem at Hackney's pumping station with backflow, which has stopped them pumping more water down either of the streams, and so they're having to redesign, put caps on the outflows at Hacklinge to stop any backflows. If the water gets too high in the North Stream and the Delph, it as I say, was backflowing. But when that work has been done, and that's imminent, that's another good factor, another progressive factor that should help. But then in sequence, all these other things need to happen.
I could see the various problems at each point. I didn't know about the pumping station issue, but it appeared to be solvable, and the Environment Agency were committed to getting this flow going. One issue again which has occurred to me is that the Internal Drainage Board do not take responsibility for the rope walk and the butts. The Environment Agency does not take responsibility for the rope walk and the butts, and it is defined as riparian responsibility, which is the landowners on both sides of the water. It's their responsibility to maintain it. And I do recall when I lived off Fordwich Place, we had an unnamed broad ditch, gutter, wider, twice the width of this table. And when we asked everybody, who's going to clear it out? And the reply was riparian responsibility, you do. Now, that has been interpreted as Dover District Council make the decision, because they own the town wall, the town walls and on the rope walk, and then all of the land on both sides of the butts. Who owns the land by the co-op? The bit that always floods in winter and forms a nice pond with the ducks in. Who owns that? The co-op.
DDC owns it.
They cut it, don't they? DDC.
DDC cut it, don't they? Anyway, but On the other side of the rope walk, Sandwich Town Council owns Cowley's Meadow and the Donkey Paddock. So in a way, Sandwich Town Council, and it's been a feature of our discussions, is that we have to keep reminding ourselves we don't have any decision-making powers. We don't have any powers to decide anything about these watercourses, which is ironic, given that it's all about the watercourses in Sandwich and the people most affected are the residents of Sandwich. But if it's riparian responsibility along the rope walk, then Sandwich Town Council has got the responsibility to make decisions about maintenance. And that seems to have gone by the by. I've never seen any evidence, apart from, of course, the original working group, which contained councillors from Sandwich, having any input on the rope walk. Well, not the butts, because Sandwich Town Council doesn't own any of that land. Anyway, that's an issue.
But didn't the Environment Agency actually do quite a lot of desilting and depositing on the banks, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That was the EA that did that. Even if they weren't responsible, they did it.
Well, yeah, they did it
EDC.
for DDC.
Right. So it should be so DDC. Yes, they were involved, by the way, in the working group and through their representatives, always.
Yes.
Indeed, the county representative, Sue Chandler, was.
Yes.
So if DDC already knows that they have that responsibility and have done part of it,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
intention was to go all the way along, wasn't it, to the butts as well?
Yes.
That never happened.
No, but that's still being considered, that's still planned, isn't it?
Well, since they've done the causeway, and they can do it, so they can continue, they're going to put the causeway so they can deposit the silt in the field down by the council yard.
Yes. I mean, has anybody got any hard and fast opinions about whether the water in the Delph and the water in the rope walk should or should not be linked up?
Well, I think definitely should, personally.
I think it should as well.
Okay.
I would think it should. I'm sorry about Stephen Fuller and his
Yeah.
opinion, but if it can be done in such a way that the Delph flows nicely where it ought to flow and did for 700 years,
Yeah.
and Stephen would very much approve of that bit, if it can be done in such a way that that flow is considerably improved over what it is at the moment, then I would say yes, it's a good idea. I'm sure people like the landowners down would have a view on that.
Well, speaking as a resident, 40 odd years living in Paradise Road with the stream going right round our garden, separating one branch going to the cricket field and the other branch along the row of houses in Paradise Road and out towards the river. I'd be very, very happy indeed to see the stream cleared and running, stocked with fish, and whether it's linked adequately and safely with the rest of the waterways makes no difference as long as they work and we don't incidentally or accidentally flood the town.
That would
It
help the
would
mosquito
improve, it would
situation.
improve the town.
That's the big thing,
enormously.
isn't it? That's the big thing. We need to have it flowing. If it's not flowing, we're going to get the mosquitoes back again like we did last year, and they were horrendous. So yeah, I agree that it should be flowing. It's got to be flowing,
Yeah.
because otherwise, if we want to put the fish back in the boat and in the butts, then it's going to need fresh water for them to survive. So which brings them nutrients as well. So kills the mosquitoes. They sometimes eat them as well, which is pretty good. So I'm all for having it flowing.
Speaking as, sorry, one further interjection. Speaking as a resident, under the circumstances I've explained, it seems to me there's a dearth of factual information as to who owns what has been done, and what the difficulties are, and what could be done, and what couldn't be done, and that it be published widely for those who are interested, for whatever reason. At the moment, I didn't know the two reports there existed. Perhaps I've been slow in that, taking this up, I don't know. But we certainly need more information on which to base opinions and decisions, verified by the proper authorities, and also to try and get the various groups with responsibilities for different sections together and working on it as a joint project. If the town council could coordinate that and bring it together and publicise it, and by publicising it, can I urge that it's not covered solely by the use of internet, convenient though it may be, because not all of us are slaves to following up on the internet, and what my wife and I have found is simply because on occasions we tune into Facebook and we pick up various opinions and views on all sorts of local matters. Nothing that's complete and verifiable.
I think one of the purposes of this report was not just for the town council or for the town council to discuss, but for the residents to address the issues. And it's true, I think it's, apologies if you're religious, but it's like medieval religious obscurantism. Some people seem to know what's going on. The rest of us peasants don't even speak the language or know about it, and we have to take the word for different people who actually put forward different opinions about what's going on. Is there a pipe there? Is there a link there? How fast is it? It's an attempt to inform the public amongst others.
Facts, and Roy's absolutely right about that. As I say, I did meet up with Pete Dowling, he's the IGB, this morning, and he didn't know about tonight's meeting, but he would be very prepared to come, and he can give us some at least of those facts. And the other guy, the other important guy, is Darryl Price, I think, from the EA. Was he on your walk?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's very well informed, and he has access to budgets too, which is quite important.
Yeah.
And so if they too could be attracted to a meeting, so you had those facts and exactly what could be done, in what time scale, and then Dover as well, in the form of whatever they put forward.
Well, that could be a recommendation of the report, because I'm aware that it's time limited and the report has to come out. We've got elections in May, so this report will have to come out in March, April to be completed. And there are all kinds of issues about do you prepare a report when the brewery sluice hasn't been repaired yet? And the answer is you've got to. We've got a time limit. But the idea of trying to get them, yes, Pete Dowling said he'd be happy to come up and address us, would be to hold a town council sponsored meeting in the Guild Hall with both the EA and the IDB and Dover District Council and Sandwich Town Council, all welcome to find out.
Can I make a suggestion, I don't know if it's practical or not, that you find out amongst the local residents those who would be keen to follow your progress. It's almost by chance that I found out this meeting this evening, and that you have a list of those who, so that you don't feel that you've got to spray the whole of the population, except perhaps by an article in the something like that, or whatever, to start with those who would be prepared to, as it were, sign up that they will attend your meetings given the opportunity. In other words, you have a short list of people keenly interested, trying to be helpful and supportive, and certainly want to know what's happening because of their circumstances, and you have a this, then we can invite directly by one means or another.
I've got such a list, and they were circulated, and I've
By
Lots of
internet,
apologies.
by chance?
by email, direct email
Yes.
to them.
Yes, I'm not a slave to the internet.
We could put people's names and their phone numbers, couldn't we? Ready for whoever gets in
Yeah.
May.
Oh, God, yes, right. So there seems to be an agreement that we do link it up. I mean, Stephen Fuller did say, well, the rope walk and so on, that is just a long garden pond. And it could be treated as a long garden pond. You could put oxygenating plants in to get oxygen in. And through various bodies like the Sandwich Environmental Conservation Group, there are volunteers who have openly said they're ready to start raking off all the rubbish
People
on a
started
regular
doing it,
basis.
didn't they?
Yeah.
They started doing it and they were stopped by the DC,
Yeah.
so.
That said, there seems to be more or less a consensus to link it up and try to get improvements to the rope walk and the butts through what you'd call natural processes.
I think the problem with the oxygenating plants would be every time you dredge it, you have to replace them. So,
The fish. A number of people who remember the good old days have written and emailed me and said they can remember Sandwich and District Angling Association holding competitions on the rope walk because there were so many fish there. Now, is it our intention to return fish? What fish?
Native fish or
Native fish
fish just for someone to fish
Right,
out.
It have to be the native fish, wouldn't it? The fish, I mean, I think, I don't know who's storing them at the moment, they took a few out, didn't they? I don't know who, is it
Maybe
EA or
native was the
EBT?
wrong word, and then
The
fish that would live in.
The original fish that were taken out in the first
No,
place.
the original fish that were taken out were put in there so that people could fish them. They're not
I think
fish that would
naturally,
normally be there.
It'll be native to
It would be a good
Native.
idea because you'd have more people, the anglers, with an interest in keeping the stream maintained.
I've seen there taking the bait at the end of the day and all the sandwiches and everything else. So
My mum used to live opposite there. They're even there all night long.
Yeah.
A carp, native?
No.
No.
Oh, they might be native to Great Britain. Are they native? Because koi carp aren't,
No,
obviously,
no,
but carp, I think we don't eat them in England.
No.
You're not allowed to, it's illegal to take out fish from local rivers and eat them. It's illegal.
All over England.
Pretty much, so yeah, unless you get permission from the landowner.
What about
to-
fly
With a
fishes?
permit.
You can
Yes.
eat them and can't fish them.
You have to get a permit, so you get a permit from the EA to fish in streams and rivers.
I think it'd be much more fun if you had it like
But even so, I don't think people in England eat carp. Polish people do, but I don't think we.
Years ago, Sandwich Town Council used to sell the licences to fish on the rope walk years ago.
They did until it got like this.
Yeah.
I think it's much better actually, like with kids who fish in nets and jams out catching fish. I think it's
And Foxborough.
much more interesting.
Yeah.
Big down ending.
I think that's to do with money as well, isn't it? You have to ask how much money Sandwich Town Council made from selling fishing licences.
That seems to imply that Sandwich Town Council at one stage did feel it had responsibility for the rope walk and did have a say in it.
Yeah, I don't know who, maybe it sold them the licences for whoever stopped the rope walk.
Well, I understood if you were a resident, you didn't buy a license, you could fish in.
Right.
That's what I heard.
Carry on.
Anyway, carry on.
You can remember fish and eels.
Eels.
Eels, did you get eels there?
I can remember fish and eels when they first came.
In the rope walk?
Must be used in the Delta.
Certainly in the streams, the downstream. Stuff like that.
Well, the joy of seeing more Delf waters. I mean, I've seen a pike in the Delf by the railway line.
Yeah.
Not a big pipe, but it was only about like that, but it was alive and
Yeah, it had a
floated.
bit there because when the previous desilting just before the tunnel under the railway line was carried out, whenever that was, 2 years ago, they had an expert, at any rate, a biological expert who was sampling water and putting his net in and catching all sorts of interesting fish. He gave me some examples, didn't mean much to me, but you know, it was alive, there's no doubt about it
Yeah.
at that point, much more than would seem obvious.
Yeah, so in fact, this idea of diverting Delft water into the road walk could in fact introduce more native wildlife than exists in the road walk.
There's a long, extensive list. I've just got it on my phone. There's a long, extensive list of fish in the southeast of England in rivers. So there's loads. There's pike, common carp, roach, trench, eel, chubs, bream, brown trout, perch, rainbow trout, Atlantic salmon. Don't see those going in there. Common dace, rudd, gudgeons, free spins, sticklebacks, minnows. They're tiny now. I used to keep them in loft tanks. Stone loach, river emperor, ruffles, graylings. There's catfish and trout. There's loads.
But not really in a rope walk anymore.
No, probably not.
No.
You'd have to have a flow, I think, to get them in.
Yeah,
Huh?
I think you'd have to have a flow.
Yes, you'd have to
Yeah,
have a flow.
definitely.
To
Yeah,
bring
they
them
can't
in,
jump
yeah.
over the road.
Okay, what were the other issues?
So does everyone agree that we want the Delft to flow into the?
Looks like it, yeah.
But we're not many
With the
people.
proviso, surely, that the historic Delft stream is flowing again
Yes.
sufficiently.
Mhm.
Yes,
I mean, is there a sort of priority one and then a priority two?
maybe the Delft gets the favoured treatment.
I would thought if the Delft was flowing, like in the winter months, I think it'd be flowing all the time, just a gentle trickle. I mean, the butts did only be flushed once a week or something like that, once a month, just to get hopefully take some of the duckweed away.
As a town guide, I have to say, if I walk people down Delft Street, I do mention the fact that it was Sandwich water supply, but avert your eyes.
Yes, yeah, don't look at it now.
Going back to the original moat, I mean, that must have surely linked up with the river, I would have thought.
Yeah, down by the children's.
Yeah, and so
Play
it would
area.
have been a tidal river, a tidal moat, or like just
Yes.
a mud moat, a low tide, I don't know.
Yes, must have been.
I think that's where we need some verifiable facts about the various options and the implications of those options. Because if I had to choose between moat and river, I'd want to see the river running. I think it would be excellent from the point of view of the interest in the town as a sightseeing site for visitors and so on, as long as it isn't undermined by the linkage with the moat or the wider waterways. That would be my preference.
I agree with
But
that. I think
I
that's
don't see
one.
why it shouldn't be
Yes.
possible to have
Mhm.
both.
And it has to be somehow linked into the tourism offer. You know, there's got to be value for money in doing it and all of that. And also we need a proper maintenance regime in place. And that may consist of paid people to go and do maintenance on a regular basis. Or it might even be volunteers that are happy to help with litter picking. Or something like that. It needs to be really thought well through. So if it is implemented, it lands very well and everyone thinks it's a really good job that's been done.
Yes, yeah. We have to see it
Yes,
to
that's
believe
right.
it's
Yeah.
been done.
How often are they proposing to desilt it, do you know? Is it every 5 years, something like that?
Was it 7-year cycle? I seem to have read somewhere that every 7
There's
years.
something about that in Stephen wrote about the ecological aspects of the upper Delft at any rate, and the reed cutting and everything else like that. So that's why I mean the information that's contained there about the ecology of the Delft is fascinating, and you know, it's all almost a responsibility to
Yeah.
ensure that it lives as a street. isn't it?
As a guide for the town, you must surely take in the back street, because that is the moat, so that's
Yeah.
quite an important thing.
It is.
But you prefer the
It's again something which you look at and think, oh, that's a bit disgusting, and you don't go near it in midsummer, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, for the reasons we all mentioned.
I think if it is a plan that's got legs, I mean, I think, you know, you could invest some time in developing a narrative, couldn't you, for people in Sandwich and beyond. Having a storyline to tell would help with the communication effort around implementation of a plan going forward. And I think there's a great story to tell about all the effort over the years, the previous working groups you talked about earlier, didn't you? All of those folk that have been involved in this over the years, well, actually we do get a good result. They can all be congratulated for all the efforts that they've put in place to help solve what it seems like is a very intricate problem, isn't it? It's very complicated, a complicated problem to solve.
It's been a steep learning curve for me. Every day some new bit of information will come in about where this links or doesn't link. Finally, the report, I mean, what I'm proposing from this meeting, secretly, I've been writing the report already. I'm prepared to reveal that to the public. But it's still to be completed because these are some quite important decisions. But what I propose is that there be another meeting of this group, and before that, I will circulate, unfortunately by email, probably with an attachment, a copy of the report that I've written, which is a combination of history, current information, what's going on, and what would you like to see. I'm not precious about it. Anybody who disagrees with it or wants to pick holes in it, feel free, and I will absorb as much of that as is consistent with the body, and then it gets submitted to Sandwich Town Council. And looking at two other councillors, what do you think is right? Should I submit it to Sandwich Town Council for Sandwich Town Council to pick holes in it? Or just submit it to Sandwich Town Council and say, that is the report?
I think you should submit it to the people in this room and the people that came last time, maybe, who
I've
actually
got the
know
list,
things
yeah,
about
I've got the list,
this. They should pick holes in it. I'm sure there won't be any holes, but anyway. And then you should just present it to Sandwich Town
Yeah,
Council,
it's
because otherwise
yeah, it would take
it would
months.
just go on and on.
That's yeah. So there will be one more meeting of this body.
Good. Could I just ask, when you were set up as a group, this group was set up by the council, did it give you terms of reference?
No, only the broad outline that I've talked about. It's to be informative for the residents, for the council, and it would invite the council and people in the town to express an opinion, bearing in mind we don't decide. It's the Environment Agency and the Internal Drainage Board, small extent over District Council, who decide what happens. But there was a need for Sandwich Town Council and the residents to have an opinion, considering that we are the people that it impacts on.
I have one concern. So after the next meeting we have as a working group, that's it. So we've dealt with it. My concern is that I believe once this is done, because the working was done, it may be brushed under the carpet. Now, I proposed yesterday at the Tourism Information Working Group that the Tourism Committee is reset up back and formed to how it was before. Now, I'd like to propose that if put in the report that an Environmental Committee is set up with others, councillors and others, again, so we can look at, this can be concentrated even more. so we can continue you can continue your amazing work with getting the Delf stream back up and running again. And also other factors within the town as well, including the Sandwich Environmental Group.
That's a good idea. Also, I don't know if this goes in the report or not, but several residents suggested that we have a volunteer group,
Yes.
because a lot of stuff can be done by volunteers, can't it?
And Pete Dowden from the IDB gave me the details of the Kentish Stour Wildlife Group that organises volunteers
For their
all on
part
the
of the
Stour.
Stour, yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
includes us, because we're on the Stour. So yeah, I'll put that, and I'll put that suggestion. So I will circulate the next and final meeting, which will be sometime in March, late March.
If you were to do what you just said, which is very encouraging, but would it be a good idea to send that to Pete Dowling and Darryl Price?
Yes.
Because then hopefully even if they couldn't attend the meeting,
Yes.
they could put in the facts that, well, quite rightly says, would make a huge difference if we knew precisely what the rate of progress is, and indeed what costs might be involved, which they might be looking for some support for.
They never mentioned,
They did.
did
I've forgotten the name of the smaller man with the glasses. You know,
they? Darryl Price.
Okay, he said he wants to do a lot more, but he doesn't have the budget, and he only has a budget really for flooding. Anything else he does is just him trying to help. He doesn't have a
That's
budget.
their priority, isn't it, nationally?
Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And they always say they spend a fortune on Sandwich to protect us from flooding.
Yeah.
So everything else is a bonus.
We're lucky.
Actually, I do remember that coming out of the previous one.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they got on and did things,
Yeah.
including various loose
They're
side.
so quick as well, aren't they? Because they said they were going to do that
Yeah.
bit outside, I don't know,
Mallards.
Mallards, and then a few days later they were doing it.
Yeah. It was our influence.
Yes, yeah. We saved the waterways.
We did. Shall we call a halt now?
Can I just say quickly, I do feel that having some sort of ongoing group would be a positive thing to have, and the gentleman from the EA and the IDB also suggested that we continue a strong liaison with them.
Yes.
So I think that would be good. I'm not sure what form that group should take, and I'd like that perhaps we think about that. Because, for instance, we've got the Sandwich Environmental Conservation Group, we've got sort of different environmental groups within Sandwich, and is it perhaps more a case of putting an STC representative into one of those groups, or should it be an STC committee group? I mean, I don't know, it could be either way, couldn't it? But I'd like to think that we looked at the variety of options before making a recommendation in that regard.
It is putting different names on the same people, because say the work on the flower beds along the rope walk, which spilled over into looking at the state of the water and thinking that has to be improved. That Sandwich in Bloom, the town team and the Sandwich Environmental Conservation Group, but in actual fact they all mix together and do the work. So, but a voluntary body, yes.
I personally disagree with what Christina Grins has said. I think that if we had an environmental committee again within Sandwich Town Council, all eggs in one basket, and Sandwich Town Council will have a better authority, a better voice to speak for the residents, to do, because we are a local authority, to deal with the district authority and the county authorities, and we need to, and also for the EA. So if we done councillors and all the groups in one basket, I reckon it would work much better than having councillors going off to different voices.
I'd like to add to that, because Councillor Marie just said, environmental group, which actually expands the scope potentially quite a lot, because we had the speech on behalf of the tree warden at the last meeting, at the Heritage and Townscape meeting, that raised a number of points, in particular that Sandwich Town Council is perhaps behind various other local councils in environmental terms, so that it's not just about waterways. I mean, we're here to talk about waterways as the Waterways Working Group, but in terms of environmental issues, that's a much bigger thing, and certainly the Town Council should really be looking at that, and perhaps waterways comes into that. You know, it really depends on how the council would like to see it structured.
Well, yeah, I'll introduce those issues into the final report. Right. Thank you. And I'll circulate a draft version of the report